Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of New Music Weekly. It's July 15th, 2023, and this is the show where I give you guys the top 5 prog news headlines for the week, introduce you guys to some cool new prog singles, and give you updates on the channel and what's happening here on Nathan on Shuffle. And I really recommend you guys check the description. I put a lot of information about what the headlines are so you can see them in the description, and also links to YouTube videos for all of the singles that I talk about through the episode. So that's a fun way, I think, to interact with the episode, to listen to me talk about these things, and then to go through the description and click on the links to listen to the songs that I talk about and all that kind of stuff. So that's the hope, at least. That's why I put all that stuff in the description. And for those of you who haven't subscribed yet, I really recommend you subscribe. I do these shows weekly. That's why it's called New Music Weekly, letting you guys know about all the best in prog and my opinions on things, and hopefully introducing you guys to some cool new stuff. Or just being a collective place for all the cool prog news and stuff. And also on the channel I do a bunch of other stuff, prog reviews, do stuff like reactions with my wife, and it's just a fun time. So I really recommend a subscription and hanging around in these parts. So, and of course a comment and a like on any of these videos as well, appreciate it also. So first prog headline for the week, I always like to start item number 1 is some of the new releases that have come out, and it's kind of a big weekend for new releases, surprisingly. I wasn't expecting July to actually have very many releases. I thought this part of the show would be a little bit dry and not have as much going on, but I have a long list, so let's get into it. I'll just touch on these briefly, and there's a good chance I'll talk about them in more depth in a future episode. You know, I like to do weekly new album spotlights on the albums that really are standing out to me, so some of these may be spotlighted in the future. But for now, we've got Ring Van Mobius, their new album Commissioned Works Part 2, 6 Drops of Poison. This is a retro prog band from Norway. Really interesting sound to them. It sounds very vintage. A lot of people compare them to Emerson, Lake and Palmer because they have a lot of really cool vintage keyboard sounds that really accentuate the band. And this project in particular is a really interesting one. It sounds like they were approached to write music for the next solo performance of a choreographer, Harold Bahari. So this started as a bit of collaboration in that sense, and creating a good backdrop of music for this choreography and this production. But they've decided to work it into an actual studio album, so the pieces are here in a different form at least. And so there's a lot of details about this on their Bandcamp and such, so I'm only touching on kind of the basics of it, but it's really interesting and a conceptual work and something to really uncover if you like that classic 70s prog style. Dream the Electric Sleep came out with the album American Mystic, a really cool band from Lexington, Kentucky, formed in 2009. They skirt the line between prog a little bit. You know, they have very clever arrangements and really intricate, cool rock music, but it doesn't really lean heavily on prog, like classic prog influences. It's just really well done, well crafted, modern rock music that I just really love, and takes some influences from some of these various prog bands and adjacent to prog bands. And so it's a really great album. It's one that really stood out to me through my listen through to some of these albums. So I would really recommend checking that out. That'll certainly be a spotlight in the future, I believe. So. And then we've got Voyager and their album Fearless in Love. Voyager is an Australian band that have been getting some attention and acclaim because they've been part of the Eurovision tournament or festival, or however you want to call it. I'm not as familiar being here in the US with Eurovision, but they participated in it. They placed pretty well, and this is their new album that features some of the tracks that they were playing on Eurovision, I believe. A little bit of a retro 80s synth-inspired vibe, but with a prog metal twist. Really cool stuff with Voyager. They deserve more attention and acclaim. Definitely one to check out. And then I saw Agusa has an album, Prima Materia. This is a band that formed in 2013 in Sweden. This is, I believe, more of an instrumental type project, very much in that folkier psychedelia of 70s prog with symphonic touches. Definitely some shared ground with like Engelgard and those types of bands, I think. But really cool sound. I was enjoying this one very heavily, listening to parts of it. I need to do full deep dives into all of these, but really cool sound. Definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of instrumental classic prog. United Progressive Fraternity released their Planetary Overlord Overload, Planetary Overload Part 2 Hope, which is a second part to their last album, which was, I believe, called Loss. Very much an environmental type theme, trying to protect the planet and the environment, and there's a lot of messaging to this one, but it's has a backdrop of some progressive elements. In fact, the track list, the guest list is a who's who of people in modern prog. This was basically an offshoot from Unitopia, a very exciting band that's split up, but sounds like they're back together and actually releasing an album pretty soon. Mark Truiak on vocals, Steve Unruh playing a whole bunch of different instruments on this, and guests, like I said, like Ben Craven, Nick Magnus, Rachel Flowers, Ryoko Moto, Sean Timms, Rachel Flowers, Steve Hackett, Colin Edwin, Jonas Reingold. The track list, the guest list goes on and on. Hasse Froberg on here. There's just tons and tons of guests. It's a 2-hour sprawling album. Definitely worth checking out. Something I need to dive deeper into. And then we've got Neal Morse Band's live album coming out also, An Evening of Innocence and Danger live in Hamburg. So really cool release there as well if you like the Innocence and Danger album. And Neal Morse Band is Unparalleled live, so that's definitely going to be a treat. So definitely worth checking out. And speaking of Neal Morse Band and some related topics, item number 2 today is the new band TEMIC, which features Eric Gillette from the Neal Morse Band, as well as Diego Tejeida, who was previously of Hackett fame. They announced their debut album and a single, Count Your Losses. This is a really cool project, definitely more in the prog metal space. They have, of course, like I mentioned, Eric Gillette and former Hackett keyboardist Diego Tejeida. Also rounding up the lineup is Simon Sandness, who drums for Shining and Archetype, and then Frederick Bergensen Klemp, who shows his vocal range here, and he's the singer for a band called Marathon. So really interesting new collective of musicians. Their new album, Terror Management Theory, is going to be out on November 17th on Seasons of Mist, but we get an advanced teaser of sorts, a single to get a taste for what their sound is like, called Count Your Losses, which will definitely be part of my singles list. So a band to watch out for with some notable prog figures, a little bit of almost a super group of sorts, and should be a really cool release that I'll definitely be talking more about in the future. Item number 3, TesseracT announced a new album called War of Being. They released a single for this one as well, a big sprawling, I believe like 11-minute or longer single release that I'll put in the singles list as well in the description. Their prog metal of that more heavier, intense type. Bands like Periphery can be considered some of their contemporaries. This album, War of Being, is going to be released September 15th via K-Scope, 5 years since the release of their previous album, Sonder. Their single, War of Being, is a really interesting video to check out. It has a lot of cool visual effects and, is a perfect prologue for the album's storyline. Apparently it's going to be a big, epic concept album, it seems. And there's a little bit of heavier vocals and growling stuff. I believe on their last few records, they really haven't delved as much into the heavier, growling, extreme vocals and been much more melodic in the vocal front. But they're kind of diving back into their older style with some heavier stuff. Which it balances pretty well. I think it's fairly good, but I want to put that disclaimer if you're not a fan of the growling vocals. I somewhat struggle with it, so I know there's others out there who feel similarly. It looks like they're also doing a world tour to accompany the record and on all that stuff. So really cool news for TesseracT if you're a fan of their prog metal stylings, and should be something to follow and be interested in. Item number 4, Steve Hackett announces a new live set, Foxtrot at 50, plus Hackett Highlights live in Brighton. So this is a new live audiovisual extravaganza based on the previous tour that Steve Hackett's been on. He does this very often. He has so many releases to his name now, releasing a live set of every tour that he does, and he's on a constant touring cycle, it seems. But in this one, they're playing Foxtrot, really a classic Genesis album that everyone should be familiar with if you're here watching a prog channel. Just a classic, beautiful album, apparently celebrating its 50th anniversary. And then you get a selection of some of his solo works on this track listing as well. So it should be a really cool, diverse list of songs. I believe the track Watcher of the Skies classic Genesis track is available to listen to the live performance sung by Nad Sylvan, who always accompanies Steve Hackett on these live tours. So definitely should be one to check out if you're a fan of classic Genesis, a fan of Steve Hackett and his solo work. It's available to pre-order now on limited 2 CD plus and Blu-ray, 2 CD DVD. Also 5.1 surround makes, 4 LP edition also available. So this is coming out September 15th this year, so not too far away, a couple months away, and we'll have that package, so it should be a really cool one. And then item number 5, Moody Blues bassist John Lodge will release Days of Future Past, My Sojourn to accompany the July US tour. So this is a new version of the classic Moody Blues album recorded with his 10,000 Light Years band and Yes singer John Davison, as well as a special appearance from late Moody Blues drummer Graham Edge. So it should be a cool package, some interesting ways to re-explore this classic album. It's the 56th anniversary of Days of Future Past, so it's been out for quite some time. Back in the 60s, a really seminal Prog release that really set the stage for what was to come. You know, it's somewhat of a proto-Prog. Some people consider it one of the first early Prog albums. Some people consider it more of an influential, but maybe not purely Prog itself. But whatever the case may be, it's a massive album, very beautifully done with a lot of orchestration and just beautiful soundscapes. It's really a classic record that I just totally adore. So it sounds like it's going to be available as a Digipack CD as a special fan club only release, available at their upcoming shows in July. But I believe there's a place to pre-order and check it out. So really cool little release from John Lodge of Moody Blues. So should be a cool one to check out if you're a fan. And then getting into the Prog singles list, I've talked through most of these throughout the show. TEMIC's Count Your Losses, that new Prog band with Eric Gillette and Diego from Hackett, should be a really cool album to check out if the single's any indication, so definitely check that one. TesseracT's War of Being, that sprawling 11-minute prog metal epic song, really cool stuff. Voyager's Ultraviolet is their latest single to promote their new album that just came out that I talked about, so definitely check out that single. Sojourn has a new single out called Memorial. They have a release coming. This is the title track from their album Memorial, which is coming out September 1st. They're more of a heavier type of sound, you know, like Tool-ish inspired, you know, very much that sort of prog metal sound. Really interesting, really cool. Neal Morse has a new single, Heaven in Charge of Hell, which is coming on his Joseph Part 1 album coming in August. So another taste into that world and what he's doing. And like I mentioned, that Steve Hackett track, Watcher of the Skies, live in Brighton, is available to watch as well. So check out the description. I have links to all the YouTube clips for all of these singles, and they're all really interesting and cool to check out. A little bit of a heavier focused group of singles, but you know, the Neal Morse and Steve Hackett help round out and give it a more traditional prog sort of bent. So and that is really what we've got here. This week I felt was a little lighter on the channel. I decided to only do one show this week when I usually do two. You know, I skipped my usual top 5 episode just because I didn't have as much time to record. But I did put out a really great review of I Am the Manic Whale's bumper book of mystery stories. Just a fantastic new symphonic prog album that I think everyone who watches this channel should check out. It's really fun, and it's going to place highly probably on my year-end list. I just think it's a great combination of like the storytelling vibe and some of the beautiful lush arrangements of Big Big Train with some of that quirky playfulness of Spock's Beard and what they accomplished, especially back in their heyday. So it's a really cool album with a lot of different interesting stories throughout the track list that I think you'll enjoy if you like that style prog. I did a Prog Song Sunday with Jana last week, as usual. We covered, let me think, I always have to go back into my memory banks here. We covered a Camel song. We covered Camel's Song Within a Song, so check that out. If you're a Camel fan or curious about Camel, we're going to be covering the Flower Kings in this upcoming episode tomorrow, so you can look forward to some more Flower Kings coverage there. And I'm going to be doing a review of No Spoon's Opus, incredible prog album that's come out this year, prog metal, Hackett, Dream Theater inspired, just a wonderful, beautiful album that I've been itching to talk about and excited to get into. And so beyond that, there also is going to be a top 5. I'm going to get back into the top 5 world with a supergroup, Prog supergroup related episode. Should be really fun as well. And so that's what you could expect in the near future. I'm also doing a bit of a collaborative video with some of my YouTube friends. That should be coming out hopefully in the upcoming week or two, where we discuss the best of Prog in the second quarter of the year. So a lot of cool stuff to look forward to, a lot of great albums. Like I mentioned in my albums list for new releases, there's just so much coming out, so you could expect a lot of great spotlights on new albums in the future. If you're looking for great Prog recommendations, that's partly what I'm trying to do here on the channel. So thank you for joining me. Thank you guys so much. It's been fantastic talking to you guys, and hopefully you'll check me out on future episodes and stick with the channel and that you're enjoying it. So let me know in the comments how you feel, and if you have any news items that I may have skipped over and didn't notice, that would be much appreciated. I love getting the catch up in the comment section of other things people are excited about in the Prog world that maybe I didn't catch in my episode. So thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys in a future episode. Bye everybody.